Could I ask one more question about my adult kids? I've been asking Abraham about my kids for the last decade or so, and always getting the answers. And I may have already heard it today, but in fact, Abraham has helped me raise my kids. Thank you very much. My kids are now adults, young adults in their early 20s. And more I've been able to trust that they have their own paths, that they have their own vortex. But at times, and now my son's preparing to be a golfer and my daughter's getting ready for her wedding. But at times I get into the mix of, oh my God, she wants a perfect wedding. I hope it turns out perfect. I don't want her to be sad. Or, oh my gosh, I hope he passes the PGA exam. I don't want him to be sad. So I project or whatever. I worry about them, and
well, you're doing the same thing with them that you're doing with your painting. Okay. You're trying to create a perfect landscape so that you can all feel good when you look at it, rather than figuring out how to feel good, and then the perfect landscape will come about. So it's not as difficult as it feels. Just focus generally on what you believe your daughter wants to feel about her wedding, about her marriage, about her relationship, about this new beginning in her life. What is it that she wants to feel, and what would you like to feel about that? In other words, rather than thinking about the place and the flowers and all of the details, what is it the core? What's the vibrational emotional grid? What do you think she wants her wedding day to be, and what do you want it to be?
She is so into the details of the planning.
We didn't ask.
That I want her to be happy.
That's
with whatever happens.
No, not with whatever happens.
Okay.
Happy. Because when you put the with whatever happens, now you got to get into the details and try to control them.
Right. In my brain, I've been trying to control.
So happy. What's a happy feeling? What's a happy wedding feel like? It feels like two people who really, really love each other coming together. It feels like a lot of well-wishers. It feels like people having a good time. It feels like a really good party. It feels like stepping out into something that's really wonderful. You give us some. What's the feeling of happy that revolves around a party like a wedding party? What is it that you want?
Pretty pictures, her to feel good in her dress.
But now what you're doing,
for it not to be too hot on that day. But
now what you're doing, you're doing the same thing you're doing with the painting. Now what you're doing is trying to define and dictate the details to which she will have a happy response. It's getting the cart before the horse again. What you're wanting to do is to define and feel, see if you can create an emotional grid, at least for yourself. What does it feel like? What would it feel like to be in an environment where you just feel happy? Happy about your decision, happy about your choice of partner, happy about the people that are gathering to celebrate with you, happy about the music, happy about the feeling of being in this environment. Esther has the experience every time she walks into a room like this, and not lately, but there have been some times where she has entered from the back and walked through the crowd, and the feeling of you is just intoxicating. The feeling of anticipation, the feeling of expectation, the feeling of having your questions satisfied, the feeling of becoming in alignment with who you are, the feeling of elation. And often the way she gets there in advance is by remembering those happy moments, by knowing that there's the potential for that is really wonderful. And so how do you translate that into a wedding where you've been fussing and worrying about all of the details that need to be perfect in order to not feel bad? That's the challenge, isn't it?
Right, yeah. So if the worries pop in, just remind myself of the feeling of the happiness and the joy and everything coming together, and the word perfection keeps coming in. I want it to fall together perfectly.
We would focus in this way.
Okay.
Rather than focusing on the details of what the people will see.
Yes.
We would focus upon the feeling of how the people will feel. Mm-hmm. We would focus upon people coming together who maybe haven't been together for a while. The feeling of family, the feeling of friendship, the feeling of fun, the feeling of setting an evening aside for the deliciousness of it. We would focus upon the interaction of the people, not the interaction of the people with the things. Mm-hmm. We would focus upon the interaction of the people.
And the bride being happy. I just want the bride to be happy.
It's the same thing that we're talking about with the painting. It's getting into that general place. And when you're not used to doing it, it's hard to do.
It is.
It's hard to do. What does this room feel like? So it's pretty enough, but there are no flowers and no party favors, and there is no music. So what is the feeling of this room? What is the feeling? It's a good feeling room, you know it is. Mm-hmm. So why do we feel good here? We feel good here because we all chose to be here. We feel good here because we've been focused positively upon one another. We feel good here because we know that well-being abounds. We feel good here because we know that all is well and that the answers will come. But now we're getting a little too specific. What feels good? What feels good about this room? What feels good about it? In other words, Jerry always wanted you to be comfortable in your chairs. He always wanted to make sure that the room was big enough for those of you who showed up. He wants the temperature to be comfortable enough that within reason you can dress in a way that you can be comfortable. But that's all sort of like party favors. What is it? What is it that produces an emotional environment in a room? And we'll tell you what it is here. You all have projected your desires in advance, and as we've been saying to you already, the party is already formed in the sense that what your intentions are have already been realized by the larger part of you. Mm-hmm. In simple terms, we set the tone. That non-physical energy sets the tone. Mm-hmm. We don't wait for you to set it and then try to define it. We set the tone. We hold the feeling. We know who you are. We know your brilliance. We know your worthiness. We know your potential for love. We know your potential for appreciation. We know who you really are because we know who you've become vibrationally. And we know that so clearly that we dominate the vibration, which means if you're going to have a good time, which you want to do or you wouldn't be here, you have to come into alignment with that which we are. And every time it happens, for the majority of those who come, you leave feeling more love than you usually feel. You leave feeling more clarity than you usually feel. You leave feeling more appreciation for life in general. You leave more enlivened than you usually are as a result of this little bit of time that we spend together. And that's what any celebration can be. All of those people that are joining for those party have sent in advance their emissaries, and the non-physical part of them has already arrived. The potential for a wonderful place is already in place, but somebody's got to set the tone, and it's probably not going to be the bride if she's freaking out over all kinds of things. You could be the perfect one to do that, to expect that all of that intentionality, that there are people at that celebration that are relatives that your daughter and her groom have not yet even met. Mm-hmm. They lived before they became part of the family picture, but they are all part of the party. You see what we're getting at? Mm-hmm. Feel that. Feel the harmony. Feel the non-physical harmonics. Do you know it's the non-physical harmonics that keep your planet spinning in orbit in perfect proximity to other planets? It's a good thing that there are non-physical harmonics. You all are not doing that good of job. Look at the mess you're making of politics. But it doesn't matter, because the longevity, because the long view, because the never-endedness, because the non-physical, because the vortex is the dominant part. This is what we're wanting to convey to you. It is the dominant part. Whether we're talking about a room like this, whether we're talking about the planet spinning in its orbit, whether we're talking about a party that you're calling a wedding, or whether we're talking about a dinner party that you're going to have tonight around a table. Mm-hmm. In other words, the non-physical is already there. Are you going to join the party? And you're not if you're fussing and worrying about all of the details that you need to be perfect in order to give somebody a good party. It's not about that stuff. It's about the feeling.
So I need to get my emotional tone, or set the emotional tone of the party.
Do you want to go to this wedding?
Yes.
And you want people to have a good time?
Yeah.
And do you want to see happy faces around the tables?
Yes.
And are you eager to watch people rendezvousing that haven't seen each other for a while? And you want to just see them happy to see each other? And you want to look around the room at who's there and just revel in the deliciousness of all of those people coming to celebrate your little girl's day? Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about. In other words, you got to get to the emotion of it. Mm-hmm. You have some fun to do, don't you?
Yeah, and the emotion, I need to get into the emotion of her being happy, or her, no, just me be happy, just believe that Abraham's, or whatever, the tone has already been set.
It's all right, and we are so pleased that you are so stubborn.
Sorry.
Because your point of view is what it is, and we want to bring you around to sort of seeing it in the way that we see it, because all of the things that we've been talking about, you have that same perspective that's keeping you from what you're really wanting to achieve. And that is, and it's what we were talking about just a bit ago, it's trying to figure out how to control the details so that you can have a satisfying feeling response to the details that you've created. That's backwards. Okay. Instead, you want to figure out why you want those details and how you want to feel, but then you want to produce the feelings within you without the details. Okay. You want to find some way. That's like going and producing the feeling of incredible appreciation of this planet without needing to paint a picture, by looking out at the landscape until it produces the emotion within you. So you want to find some way, lots of different ways of producing the emotion of well-being, the emotion of people loving to be together, the emotion of a good time, the emotion of a lot of people coming together and just having a wonderful, wonderful time, the emotion of seeing them leave and seeing their almost reluctance to leave because they were transformed into such a place of well-being. It was like all the people who have ever loved all of them were there at the party in on it, you see. Mm-hmm. That's what things like that are like.
You mean the real people who are really there, or just everybody?
We're talking about the real people who are there, who are surrounded by the real people who aren't there. Right. We're talking about the real people who are there, who are surrounded by everyone that ever knew them, who still loves them more than they can even understand. We're talking about surrounding yourself with the fullness of the non-physical who is around you all the time that you don't know.